Welcome to Lunch Break. I'm Simon Constable in for Wendy. Senator John McCain calling Russia's plan for Syria to hand over chemical weapons a stall tactics. He said that in comments at a Wall Street Journal Seib and Wessel event this morning. Jerry Seib, Wall Street Journal bureau chief, and half of the Seib-Wessel team joins me now from D.C. with a first-hand account and, more important, that analysis. Thank you very much for joining us, Jerry.
Happy to be with you, Simon.
Okay, so McCain, as always, saying quite a lot. Tell us about it.
Well, look, he responded to the president's speech last night, obviously, but talked specifically about the Russian diplomatic move here, the one in which they have gotten the Syrians to admit they have chemical weapons and to say that they will sign the International Convention on Chemical Weapons, which would be a way of joining the international community and agreeing to dismantle some of those chemical weapons. What Senator McCain said was that's all well and good, but his concern is that it's a delaying tactic, a rope-a-dope strategy, potentially he called it, that might just delay military action while the Syrians continue to pound away at the opposition. Interestingly, though, he said maybe that's not entirely a bad thing, because if the president sees that diplomatic opening through, hits a dead end, he may actually have a stronger hand to go to Congress and get what Senator McCain wants him to get, which is an authorization saying we agree you should use military force to respond to Syria's chemical weapons use. That if the president can show I've exhausted a diplomatic trail, Senator McCain said, then maybe it's easier to convince people in Congress military might is the only option here.
Okay, and he's been consistent in his wanting to, in being with the president, kind of unusually, because they're both on opposite sides of the aisle. Yeah. He's been very consistent about standing by the president there. He was also talking, and let's listen to this, he was also talking about he was disappointed in the president. The president didn't give support or vocalize support for the Free Syrian Army. Let's listen to that.
And by the way, put me down as extremely skeptical. I'm not saying we should reject this out of hand, but I think that a couple of indicators. One is the Lavrov saying that the French proposal, which is basically what we would want, was, quote, unacceptable. And second of all, Putin saying that a precondition has to be the American renouncing the use of force. Both of those are just, I mean, it's just not a viable thing for the United States to agree to. So I worry a great deal that we kind of have a game of rope-a-dope for a while, and the slaughter goes on.
Okay, and that was John McCain this morning with Jerry Seib and David Wessel, and we're going to also listen to the other soundbite of him saying that he wants the president to vocalize support for the Free Syrian Army. Let's listen to that now.
I was one of those that urged the President of the United States in the Oval Office to talk to the American people, so I plead guilty as far as that is concerned. I devoutly wished last night that the President had said what he told Lindsey Graham and me in the Oval Office, and that was that he supported efforts to help the Free Syrian Army, to change the momentum, to bring about negotiations which would lead to the departure of Bashar al-Assad.
That was John McCain, Senator John McCain, earlier today at the Seib and Wessel breakfast, and we've got Jerry Seib still with us. Jerry, this, as McCain says, this situation just gets messier and messier. I mean, on the one hand, there is a proposal to do something that seems impossible, take and eliminate chemical weapons in a war zone, and on the other side there is arm the good rebels but not all of the rebels and make sure that sophisticated weapons don't end up in the hands of al-Qaeda and possibly be used against us. It just gets more and more murky. Is that your assessment too?
Well, look, I do think one of the problems here, and Senator McCain talked about this some as well, is that Americans are looking for a clear explanation of what the strategic goal is here, what's the strategy and what's the goal, and I'm not sure they entirely got that last night. Senator McCain thinks the only strategy that makes sense is to degrade the Syrian regime's military position enough that there can be a political solution to the conflict, but saying that we're going to have severely limited strikes merely to take out chemical weapons capacity and to prove a point does not guarantee that you're going to degrade the Syrian military enough to make that possible. So what's the end game? I think his answer to that is, well, we should have a bigger military strike than the president talked about last night. But, and this is the point on which he's really strong, and as the soundbite indicated, we need to support the Syrian opposition in a bigger way. He's very unhappy that American arms have only recently started to go to the Syrian opposition forces, though the president promised weeks ago they would. And so he's looking for a much bigger effort to arm the Syrian opposition, a bigger military intervention than the president wants, only by air, but with a strategic goal explicitly of degrading the Syrian regime's military to the point where they have no choice but to negotiate a solution.
Okay. Now, the last time that I remember that was very full of publicity, that the U.S. took a strike on a country as a punishment was when Reagan bombed Libya in retaliation for Gaddafi downing an airliner over Scotland. That also came in for a lot of criticism in Europe, and not all the European countries were very happy about that. It seems to me that there's a big gap there between then in the 80s and now, and there's probably a reason why we don't do that.
Well, there's kind of a continuum here. I mean, Bill Clinton did this similar thing in Afghanistan, struck at a target, an al-Qaeda target or targets in Sudan, and there was some criticism for that. But that's kind of inevitable. I think the idea of military action in Syria is particularly problematic because of the way the president went about it. He said, I'm going to respond by launching a military strike first, and then he went to Congress later and said, I think I ought to get permission. That's made it awkward. And let's just face it, Simon, the times have changed. The country is war-weary. It's skeptical now in a way it wasn't in the 80s, 90s, and the first decade of this century about whether limited military options can remain limited. They've seen the opposite in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so it's a tougher political haul, even if it was handled well. This probably hasn't been handled as well, and it was going to be tough anyway.
Okay. Tough road to hoe. Thank you very much.